Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Christopher Hart. Today we have yet another on-site episode, and don't worry about it, we will be back in studio eventually, but we are here in Nashville, Tennessee to do a few things, but while we're here, we thought it would be great if we could sit down and, actually visit a few distilleries and kind of get that on camera. So today we're at the Nelson Greenbrier Distillery, and right here in the heart of Nashville, and we are sitting down with Charlie and Chris. Chris is the national sales director, and Charlie has this incredible backstory and history that in a story I had never actually heard with how he found out. Legitimately found out. He had been hearing stories for years, but how he found out firsthand the legitimacy of what he had been passed down for generations from his family. So, we've all heard things growing up where I'll never forget that when I first started dating my wife, at the time I was 19 and her sister was 11, and her it had been passed down for generations that their family was Native American, German and Native American. And then, of course, with the development of things like Ancestry.com, you end up finding out that what you've been told your whole life isn't necessarily accurate. So it turns out that is the exact opposite case for the Nelson Greenbrier Distillery. They had been told things their entire life, and it turns out it was even more so true than they had ever hoped it was, and it inspired this incredible backstory well before the bourbon boom. And now, as many of you may know, that within the last month, Nelson Greenbrier Distillery received an even more involved investment with Constellation Brands. So today we get that story. We get the whole backstory with this distillery and how fantastic. For those of you who are in the Houston Bourbon Society, you are very, very familiar with what we've done with the brand and what we really want to do and what we plan to do as soon as they will give us the juice to do it. We're huge fans. So this week's show, as always, is sponsored by Terlato Distell Artisan Spirits, leader in premium artisan products like Bunnahabhain, Deanston, Ledaig, Tobermory, Bains, Black Bottle, and Scottish Leader. You can pick up the entire line at your local liquor store, and if you are a retailer, just simply reach out to your local United sales rep. We wanted to thank all the sponsors, this whole mobile thing, traveling across the country and visiting with brands that, it really tickles the nerd in me, and I'm very thankful because if it were not for the sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing, and I appreciate that. So without further ado, also you will see my brother-in-law's with me. So Sean Hendry, who has been listening to ESPN for years, just not my show, is with me this weekend in Nashville, and I'm excited to sit down with him, and he's going to be joining us for tomorrow's episode as well. And without further ado, Chris, Sean, and Charlie. Cheers. Thank you so much for doing this. I know this was kind of last minute. Charlie, Chris and I have known each other the last couple of years. Sean being my brother-in-law. This is my brother-in-law, guys.
Nice.
Thanks so much for doing this. I figured since we're going to be in town, I might as well sit down with you guys, have a few drinks, and talk whiskey.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. We're honored to be a part of it.
It's a bit hectic, but this is when you Google Nelson Greenbrier Distillery. This area is up there with one of the top, like one of the first few images. This barrel area. Talk to me about it. Tell me the backstory. Give me the whole spiel.
Yeah. Wow. There's kind of a lot there.
Sure.
So where we are currently is in our main barrel warehouse. Right behind us is the Tennessee state flag. Not sure if you can see all of it, but at least a part of it. And these barrels directly behind us are some of our special cask finishes. Actually, some of these are Black Bell barrels and some of our honey cask finish barrels. Then to my right are going to be some more of our cognac casks, sherry casks, and Madeira casks. But immediately to my right there, those are some of our first Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey barrels, and that's what we set out to do,
to accomplish.
From the very beginning. So my brother and I, Andy, we've been working the last 13 years on resurrecting this company. And the
resurrecting from where? What's the backstory?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just jump into it and tell you the whole story. I mean, this might take some time, so y'all free to
well, let's
feel
get
free
a
to
drink
jump
if we're
in.
going to get started with that.
You got it.
Yeah,
I hear Chris brought some booze for us. You guys are known for your finishes, right? I mean, that's something you guys have kind of, I wouldn't say, well, so I don't know where finishes began, but I would say that you guys are one of the early, like, this is something that is worth paying attention to, and you guys were doing it like in every possible form and fashion. Here we go.
Here, you take this one.
Appreciate it. What is this, by the way?
This is
our cask strength reserve. This is a 7-barrel blend of single barrels between 7 and 11 years old.
Do you know how to do it? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. I think he's mic 3, by the way. Sorry, Chris.
Okay.
Pull it down a little bit. Put it right in front of your face like this. Sorry.
No worries.
There we go.
There.
If you know what you're doing there, man, take it away.
Yeah. So this is cask strength reserve. It's a 7-barrel blend of single barrels between 7 and 11 years old. Each batch is finished at its natural cask strength. So this is batch 26 that we've ever released, and it's a whopper 120.8 proof. So it'll get your engine running very nicely.
Yeah.
I didn't fly all this way for it not to get going.
Well, this is actually the batch that Charlie and Andy gave all of us for Christmas. They're very generous folks, and so everyone at the distillery received a bottle, and it was like Santa Claus came overnight. This was sitting on my desk. So cheers to everybody.
So this is kind of a CJ special. Chris Jones bringing out his special stash of bottles.
Stash.
Well, it's funny. What else are you going to get from someone who when I got into this whole whiskey thing, the whiskey festival, the radio thing, every one of my family members, when they turned 21, they were like, what are you going to get me? Like, they know it's going to be booze, right? So, I mean, I would imagine you've got to get at least excited as to, like, what bottle of booze am I going to get for Christmas this year from the company I work and love.
Well, you should see our Christmas party. It's a lot of fun. Old Santa Claus does come to town.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but he likes to give out little mini bottles of Bellmead bourbon, and
he definitely acts the part for sure.
Oh, Chris Kringle, he's a heck of a guy. Yeah. So to get back to the story and the history behind the company and everything, which the history of the company is really the foundation of it, and there's no way that we'd be here right now, and no way that my brother and I would be in this business if it weren't for the history and heritage of the company. And so it really all starts with my great-great-great-grandfather, Charles Nelson. That's triple great. He was born on the 4th of July, which we just kind of love that fact, 1835 in Germany. And his father owned a soap and candle factory. And in 1850, decided he wanted to move his family to America, sold the soap and candle factory, converted all the family's earthly possessions to gold, and had special clothing made to hold all of the gold on his person.
Wow.
Yeah, so he gathered up his family, his wife and 6 kids. They boarded a ship named the Helena Sloman, set sail for New York. While they were at sea, there were severe storms. A lot of passengers knocked overboard, one of whom was the father. With all the gold on his person, he was taken straight to the bottom of the Atlantic. Yeah, so kind of crazy. But luckily, there's an English ship.
My mom met my dad at a Skillets. That's how interesting. That's how different our backgrounds are.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, man. But there was a nearby ship named the Devonshire, rescued the rest of the family and the passengers, and my family made it safely to New York, with literally nothing but the clothes on their backs. And Charles took over as man of the family. He was 15 at the time, and he finds work making soap and candles in New York, moves to Cincinnati, becomes a butcher, and then before the start of the Civil War, he moves to Nashville and starts a wholesale grocery business where he had 3 great selling products: his coffee, his meat, and his whiskey. And the guy who delivered his coffee was named Joel Cheek, ended up taking that blend a few blocks away to the Maxwell House Hotel, and that became a pretty popular brand of coffee. And Charles, he was just bottling whiskey at the time. He realized he was one of the first to bottle and sell whiskey rather than selling it by the barrel or the jug.
Sure.
And so he realized that the demand for his whiskey far exceeded his supply. So he bought the distillery that was producing his whiskey, and a patent for improved distillation greatly expanded the production capacity. Became one of the largest distilleries in the country. So he produced the original Tennessee whiskey, which some of these barrels behind us are from that original recipe and everything. It's a wheated Tennessee whiskey. And his distillery was known as Old Number 5 because it was registered Distillery Number 5. And we've actually got original tax documents that say Charles Nelson, registered Distillery Number 5.
You guys get to maintain that when you...
Yeah, so if you look closely at some of these barrels, you'll see that DSP 5 on there.
Yeah.
So the federal government
on the front of the building.
Yeah, we put it on the front of our building. We put it on merch. I mean, everything. We're super proud of that. And the TTB, the federal government, they recognized that fact and gave us that historic designation. So we're super proud of it. And so Charles, by 1885, he's selling roughly 380,000 gallons a year, which is nearly like 2 million bottles a year, which is more than we sell today for sure.
At this point right now.
Yeah. For at least the next, few months or so. I mean, exactly. we certainly want to get back to that point, but he produced about 30 different labels as well. So he had multiple Tennessee whiskeys, bourbons, corn whiskeys, rye whiskeys, malt whiskey, apple brandy, peach brandy, even gin. He actually produced one of the first American gins. But his Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey was his signature brand, and Belle Meade was one of those 30 labels that he produced. It was one of a few that he produced in conjunction with other companies. So that's kind of why we started out with Belle Meade. I'll get more into that in a little bit, but and that's of course what we're drinking.
Most people's introduction to the brand is Belle Meade.
Yeah. So hardly anybody knows what Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey is because we haven't released it yet.
I think I tasted it at the. You get when you travel and do events, you get sent sometimes a little.
Oh yeah,
a little something.
You'll beg and plead, Charlie, please let me bring
out from behind the table. And
yeah, that was Nelson's 108, which is only available here at the distillery.
Sure.
And it's a version of that wheated Tennessee recipe, but it's a 2-year aged in 30-gallon barrels versus what you see behind us of 53-gallon barrels.
Well, so you guys kind of cover the gamut here. There's a couple of 10-gallon up there. What's in there?
Oh, those are just like kind of messing around. I mean, those are almost for display at this point. Sure. I mean, the whiskey's been in there
way too long.
Yeah,
sure.
we I think when we were buying some barrels, we were just like, let's get those look cute. Let's get some of those little 10-gallon barrels.
How long has it been sitting in there?
Let's see, since that looks like 2016 for that one. And both are January of 2016.
2 years in a mini barrel.
that's
going to be interesting.
That's just too long.
Yeah.
So, but I think that it's still the Tennessee whiskey. But
when you guys are expanding a bit too, right? I think we were talking. You said you guys are actually starting to send your products elsewhere, right? To age.
So at this point we're running out of space and we have to pay for some offsite storage. So pay and rent a little bit.
Plans to expand your own, like build your own rick houses?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So
with the recent, I was going to ask you about that too. The recent news about you guys. You guys are going through quite the exciting time here at the distillery.
Yeah, absolutely. And Well, touch on that in a little bit.
Okay,
if
I'll
that's
come back
cool.
to it.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to.
And a little bit like a few months from now after some.
No. Hey,
Like a few more of these.
Like a few more of these. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just such an exciting time in whiskey right now. And when you see, when I pulled up, I was kind of explaining to Sean a little bit about y'all's history. You guys may have not been the first one to do finishes, but you guys have put your mark all over it.
Yeah.
And you got in early. The boom has been a boom for a while, but I think you guys have got your foot in the door, both feet in the door, to the point that it's not this, anytime you want to start a distillery, it's an uphill struggle for a long time. And I think with the way things have been going, you guys, I think we're a little ahead of your time, in a good way.
Well, yeah. I mean, so I don't want to jump ahead too. So
Sure.
I just to sort of finish out some more of the history. So as I was talking about, like when we were selling in 1885, nearly 2 million bottles a year, all across the U.S., even internationally. Charles passed away 1891. His wife Louisa took over as one of the only women to run a distillery, which is something that we're super proud of.
Can we? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
That specific point. Never mind. That's Kentucky. Disregard. I was going to say that we recently had the discussion with the claim that Marianne was the first master distiller, but that's Kentucky, not Tennessee.
Yeah. So
brain fart.
Louisa was, she never had the title of like master distiller, but she did as like proprietor. So, I mean, we've got up on our wall over there, Louisa Nelson, I think proprietor Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery. But so she ran the distillery for the last 18 years, from 1891 till 1909, which is kind of crazy because, at that point, not only is she a woman in the South running a business when she didn't even have the right to vote, but a woman running a whiskey business in the South in a male-dominated industry, and not just any whiskey business, but one of the largest in the country. So kind of crazy. And actually, Texas, I think, didn't Texas, I didn't know this until fairly recently, had like a female governor in the early 1900s, which, you talk about what...
Sure.
Anyway,
I mean, maybe I don't.
I think 1934.
Anything past how much we hate our mayor is a little bit beyond us. Very contentious.
I think the one thing to also point out about Louisa, just me coming from the sales side of our business, is when you come visit us at the distillery, you'll notice these calendars that she created that were sent out every quarter to remind her distributors to order up. And obviously,
Smart.
Very intelligent woman, heck of a marketer, and
some risque images too.
Yeah, I mean, fairies and whatever back then. That was like
Women
showing a leg, I guess.
Yeah.
But
sure,
it's really cool that we have those on display. And as Charlie mentioned, she's a big part of our history, and that's why we honor her every single day. And even came out with an amazing liqueur that we do sell in Texas. It's one of the only 3 states that.
Which one?
Louisa's liqueur.
Yep.
I've not had it.
It's a coffee caramel pecan liqueur.
Sounds delicious.
It's really good.
And you can find it at Specs at this point right now.
Yep.
So
that's another thing I wanted to ask you guys about, but we'll come back to that too.
Okay.
Yeah. So in 1909, Louisa running the business. 1909, statewide prohibition hits Tennessee, forcing them to close their doors. And at that point, we still had like 8,000 barrels in storage, and we had 3 facilities at that point. We had our office, warehouse, and bottling facility downtown Nashville, big time production facility 20 miles north in Greenbrier, Tennessee.
Thank you.
Thanks, AJ. And then another office, warehouse, and bottling facility in Louisville. So 1909, when statewide prohibition hit Tennessee, forcing us to close our doors, we shipped 8,000 barrels up to Kentucky, bottled out there until 1915 when we ran out. At that point, we were out of business. And growing up, I didn't know about the distillery. I just knew the story of my family coming over from Germany and the gold and everything like that. And honestly, I didn't even fully believe that story until a few years ago. This lady reached out.
One hell of a story.
Yeah. And this lady, Dory Vilsnack, reached out, and she had like a copy of the New York Herald from 1850 talking about the journey over. She's like, you guys are telling the story all wrong. And like, what are you talking about? Oh my God. Like, we don't want to tell anything wrong. And
Sure.
So it turns out that
She gave you more info about it.
yeah. And so it turns out my family was actually on a safety boat that was ferrying passengers between the Helena Sloman and the Devonshire. It capsized, and that's how the father fell overboard. I was
Sunk
like,
to the bottom.
I was like, Dory, we weren't that far off. It was just a touch bit more tragic than we even knew. Like,
Yeah.
Story,
yeah,
though.
yeah.
You know what's fascinating about that is, I don't mean to be morbid, but after all these years, theoretically, they're still down there.
Yeah,
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
would be one hell of an endeavor if you guys could find that.
So actually, there was a guy from Houston that was like, or at least he lived in Houston nearly 10 years ago, probably 8 years ago, something like that. A girl that I was dating at the time, her family knew him, and he was like a big ocean explorer, and had all these little vessels that could go
Like
sort of
Steve Zissou.
deep water
Sure.
exploring.
The worst of those films, by the way.
I was,
I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan, and
Me too.
I hate that film.
oh man. But we were talking to him about, and he was like getting excited, and we were talking about going to explore the deep waters and trying to look for the gold. And
That'd be cool.
then he passed away like 4 months later, and so I don't know.
Whatever happened to that? Yeah.
Yeah, but my brother and I have kind of joked that if things don't work out here in the whiskey business,
need a
that
little
we'll
money.
take a little scuba diving lesson or something.
If things do work out here.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
For
both.
the,
Yeah,
Underwater equipment.
Yeah, either if they don't work out or if they work out really well.
Sure.
But anyway, so didn't know about the distillery growing up, but about 13 years ago, my dad went in with 3 of his buddies to buy a cow worth of meat from a butcher, and invited me and my brother to go with him to pick up our quarter of a cow worth of meat. So we're on our way to this butcher. We're running low on fuel. We stop to fill up, and at the gas station, there's this historical marker that says Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery, 1 mile east on Long Branch Road. Charles Nelson opened the Greenbrier Distillery. We're like, holy crap, what is this? We go into the butcher, I'm going to live a mile east, asked him if he knew anything about the old distillery. He's like, well, hell, look across the street. We did see this old barrel warehouse still standing, the original spring still running, drank from the spring, and then he sent us this nearby historical society where there were 2 original bottles with our name on them, and just like every hair on my body stood up.
I always
Wow.
joke Charlie grew his beard that day.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You got chills knowing that it's your lineage.
Yeah. And so Andy, my brother, and I, we looked at each other just like, man, this is what we're here to do.
Yeah, it feels almost like a sign from God that you guys are meant to bring the distillery back.
Man, and there have been so many things along the way where it's just been like reassurance. It's just like, this is kind of our destiny.
Sure.
And that was in 2006. At the time, we did a lot of research, and I mean, there were maybe like a dozen distilleries in the country making whiskey, something like that.
Yeah.
So
Not a lot.
there were not a
I said
lot.
Before your time.
It was, yeah, but we were also fresh out of college, barely of drinking age, and it was before and then during the recession.
Legal drinking age.
Yeah,
I think you were well into drinking age.
good point, fair point. But we do always remind you to
That's
drink
correct.
responsibly.
That's correct. You look like Captain Morgan right there.
So this is one of our
dark.
special secondary cast finishes. It's a local partnership we do with Blackstone Brewery. It's called Black Bell. It's only released here at the distillery as well. So this is an 11-year-old blend that we finish in stout barrels.
Yeah, Imperial Stout.
barrels for at least 6 months until our distillery team says, hey, it's ready. It's one of our cult favorites.
Yeah.
And
Where did the name come from?
So Blackstone Brewery,
Sure.
They're just down the street from us, and they age their beer in our
Sure.
barrels for about a year, and then we get some of the barrels back.
Right.
And,
No,
and we finish.
I'm in the Bell part. Like, Bell Mead.
Bell Mead. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
In my head, I see Black Bell. I'm thinking that song. Oh, Black Betty. Like in my head, immediately goes. I'm like, where? I feel like you missed an opportunity, but no, Black Bell makes sense since your name is Bell Mead.
yeah, so I'm going to pour y'all some. So y'all can try
I'll tell you
I'm not
about.
good at this, by the way.
I'll tell you about the Bell Mead name as well.
Sure.
And by the way, I'm not sure if it has if you guys noticed yet, but I don't have very many short stories.
Oh
So,
no! Listen,
is this
this
it?
show should be 15 minutes, but it's usually about an hour and a half.
More than.
Oh, this smells fantastic. I'm always a big fan of the beer back,
This
the
one.
beer boomerang. You put beer in it, then put whiskey in it. And sometimes you do whiskey, then beer, then back to whiskey. It smells almost like a licorice note, like an anise.
A little bit. And
What's the proof on that? It's low, 105.
No, it's actually this particular batch, which I believe was our third batch, is
110.
96.8.
Wow.
yeah,
We've
so
had some highs, into up into past the 110s,
Yeah.
the teens. So
It's an easy drinker too.
it's
It's
just
not too hot at all.
fantastic.
every one of these barrels is a little bit different. Like I know one of the first ones that we did, everybody was saying it was like chocolate covered raspberries, and
Oh yeah.
this one is a little bit more on the anise, the licorice sort of side, I think.
But you get those dark chocolate notes, those
Yeah.
real deep.
Yeah, the dark
This is
chocolate, yeah.
fantastic, and this is not available. What, you guys don't make that much of it?
Well, we release it at historically one time a year,
Yep.
and usually on Black Friday.
Yeah.
So if you're ever in Nashville around Black Friday or know anyone, maybe your lucky day, but it usually goes pretty quick, and it's around one bottle a person, and it's one of our cult favorites. And I have, when we get to that part, I'll pop out one of our newest cult favorites, is the honey cask finish.
Yeah, I want to hear about that as well.
Yeah.
You guys, going back to finishes being y'all's stamp. The debate always comes up, or at least in recent years, over what is bourbon, what isn't bourbon, and a good explanation that is often used is the way that you guys, what you're doing. And how finishes, it's like, they use TTB label approvals a lot of time
Yep.
to kind of showcase how it changes classification once you throw a bourbon in a barrel. But it's at the same time, it's trying to dispel this dogmatic point of view that you can make non-bourbon, like good non-bourbon whiskey, right? And,
Sure.
and a great example is that Black Bell is fantastic. And even though it may not qualify, it's absolutely fantastic. So I'm rambling a bit, but that's generally, you guys get brought up a lot, and so does Angel's Envy, trying to just kind of explain how those finishes you can make really fantastic, complicated, layered spirits that don't technically qualify as bourbon anymore, but that doesn't mean anything,
Yeah, and we try, it's bourbon that's finished in,
Sure.
but
Natural process.
And the one thing that I always like to say about us is about our secondary finishes is we're really proud of our high rye mash bill, and we want folks to taste the whiskey. We like to add some creativity to that mash bill, but it's always whiskey first, and we add the flavor through the creativity.
Sure.
And it's actually adding, if you go through the whole Bell Mead vertical, you can actually taste a very impressive flight while still tasting the base of our classic small batch, and then going all the way through. And that's what, if we ever see folks that come to our table during trade shows, I have our lineup where it's the classic, it's our cognac cask, followed by our Madeira cask, followed by our sherry cask. And I kind of started talking that as like a 3-course meal.
Sure. It's a palate for your palate.
Exactly.
Trademarked.
Yeah, the cognac cask serves as the appetizer that leads you into the Madeira cask, which is Charlie and I's favorite. And that is like you get the meat and potatoes of who we are, and then followed by your dessert, which is also nicknamed Scotch Drinker's Bourbon, which is the good old sherry cask, which is Andy Nelson's favorite as well. So,
and just with our classic and the cask finishes, a lot of that came from the fact that, so when we first discovered our history and those bottles, as I mentioned, the Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey, our plan immediately was to raise a bunch of money, build out our own distillery, start laying down barrels of our Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey, and not sell anything until they were aged for a few years. Well, being fresh out of college, barely 21, and nobody would invest with us, we did a lot of research, found that Belle Meade was one of 30 labels we produced back in the day, and that it was produced in conjunction with another company. So my family and I, we put up literally everything that we owned to personally guarantee a loan to get started sourcing barrels and working with the contract distillery, then LDI, now MGP. We were like, okay, we want to make this our own unique deal. We didn't want to just take distillate or macerate that they had and just bottle it. So we took 2 different mash bills, 2 different yeast strains, and we spent roughly a year and a half going through and getting samples from multiple different distilleries. We actually would have a broker come to my parents' house, which this would never happen today. And we had a panel of me, my brother, my dad, Dave Pickerel, who had just recently,
he did my show a couple weeks before he passed.
Really, man,
legend.
As controversial as he is at times, I couldn't not have walked away from that loving him more than ever. It was such a great discussion. And then right after we did my show, we went and had cigars and coffee. And it was like sitting with a genius and just kind of soaking up as much as you could.
Yeah. Yeah, he left Makers, and then he did some work with another company, and
a few companies.
we were his second client after he left Makers, and we had actually signed him up to work exclusively with us. And at the time, we had enough money to pay him for 3 months, and I thought, man, we know some people with some money. We can raise all the money that we need in 3 months, no problem.
Sure.
So after 3 months, we hadn't raised a penny. We had paid Dave pretty much everything that we had, which was not that much, and we were broke. And we still hadn't raised any money. And so Dave continued to work for us for over 2 years for free after that. But he said,
believed in it.
Because he believed in us and believed what we were doing. And at that point, he was like, look, hey, I still need to get paid, so I can't work with you exclusively, but just so you know, I'm going to have to take on other clients. And he did. And, obviously, as everybody knows, he became kind of like the Johnny Appleseed of the micro distillery craft whiskey industry.
Hill Rock and Blackout, or was it Blackened or
Black? I mean,
the Metallica one. Whistle Pig.
I'm afraid to say because, whether people will admit it or not, his fingerprints are on just about every small whiskey that has had any success in this industry, the great thing about Dave was that he could dive in and talk to a scientist that would go way over my head, because he was a chemical engineer, but he also understood the marketing aspect and could talk to a layperson, and tell you just, so that you could actually understand the science behind what's happening. And, just he had the full picture, and he could communicate with people and give them, all the knowledge and so that they actually understood what was happening. So yeah, we worked with Dave, but we, as I was talking about, we came up with our own sort of unique blend or commingling for Belle Meade, high rye content bourbon. And then we also wanted to put, like, back then, I don't know if y'all remember this, but there were some articles that came out that were, talking about, like, sort of bashing on sourcing, and a lot of people started sourcing, and then there was all of this kind of like backlash against
people are
sourcing.
still doing it,
and it was part of our pitch was to be upfront and honest about what we were doing. But anyway,
But also fell in line with the original brand of Belle Meade.
Exactly.
Sure.
And that's
been doing it for a couple hundred years.
And that label is one of my favorites, and because that label that you see as Belle Meade, those two studs on there, also has a story which I feel like you should share as well, Charlie.
Yeah. So Belle Meade, the brand historically was produced by Charles Nelson, my triple great grandfather, in conjunction with the Sperry Wade and Company. The Sperry Wade and Company had the Belle Meade Distillery. They distilled Belle Meade. Charles Nelson had extensive barrel aging facilities. He aged and bottled it. So the Sperry Wade and Company was also instrumental in the founding of the Belle Meade Plantation in Nashville here, which was back in the day one of the nation's leading thoroughbred farms. So the horses on the label were studs there. And the horse on the right-hand side of the label was named Bonnie Scotland, who was like the founder of the Northern Dancer bloodline that includes, War Admiral, Seabiscuit, Secretariat, California Chrome. Most of the horses that even race in today's Kentucky Derby can trace their bloodline back to Bonnie Scotland. And then the original label had the names of the horses on it above them. We decided to take the names off of the label, though, because the horse on the left-hand side of the label was named Brown Dick. So,
Wait, so what's the issue with there?
Well, exactly.
Well,
branding-wise, I feel like you're going to appeal to at least a certain youth.
I mean, we starting out having literally everything on the line.
Sure.
My parents' house included my dog. I know she's not worth as much to anybody else or a bank as she is to me, but we didn't want to take any sort of unnecessary risks.
So when I'm out in the market and I show people the original label, they're always like, "Well, why'd you take it off?" I'm like, "Well,
you mean why?"
Exactly.
Everyone knows why. It's funny.
Ever since I came to run sales, I've been pushing Charlie and Andy to do a 15-year release called the BD series.
Sure.
They'd be like, "What's the BD?"
Nobody
series?
would know.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we got to show some respect some of these days to old BD himself. So
but yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say my grandparents always raised the whole purebred dog thing. Breeding has been around for, it's real big in the U.S. We love purebred, AKC registered, this and that. So and horses, it's only that much more fanatic, especially in this part of the U.S.
And what's interesting is actually at that point in time, in the late 1800s, Nashville and Middle Tennessee was really like the horse racing capital. And it wasn't until like the late 1800s, early 1900s when they outlawed gambling on horse races here in Middle Tennessee, that a lot of it moved up north of the border to Kentucky. So you're welcome, Kentucky.
I feel like you can get away with that BD, by the way, by calling it, what does it stand for?
Brown Dick.
Belle Meade Distillery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So anyway, that gives you an idea of why, like, everything that we do, we're trying to keep in line with the history of the original. And back in the day, Belle Meade Bourbon was produced in conjunction with another company, and we started out working with another distillery to produce Belle Meade. And that was originally meant to be a bridge to get us to our Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey and to building out our own distillery. So we released Belle Meade first in 2012, and then shortly thereafter that, we were like, okay, we want to do some experimental stuff and put like our own twist on things. Sort of Charles Nelson back in the day, he did a lot, like he produced one of the first American gins, as I mentioned, and he did a lot of different stuff. And so he was kind of a pioneer. He also produced the original Tennessee whiskey, and he was kind of a pioneer in a lot of ways. And so we wanted to put our own twist on things, and we want to honor the history, but we also want to keep up with the modern day
Sure.
and
Innovate. And
Yeah.
When you mentioned your hair was on, every hair on your body was standing on end. Did it take any convincing, or were you both on the same page from the very beginning?
No, it was immediate. I mean, it was like the only moment of like pure clarity in my life, where it's just like it was like being struck by lightning. And I mean, we
For both of you.
Yeah. I mean, we looked at each other. We didn't even say anything. It was just like we just knew.
Chills. You just knew.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I believed in anything as much as it sounds like you guys believed in. Even on my wedding day, I was like, I don't know, this may not work out. She doesn't watch this. She knows. Listen, honey, I love you dearly. There's no way I would ever leave my wife. She's way better than me.
Yeah.
So that being said, working with your brother and having that moment of clarity, has there been times throughout or in the process where you've been like, man, I really want to go this direction on this particular bourbon or this particular spirit, and he's like, wow, I want to go another direction? Or are there ones that you guys kind of call your own?
Yeah, did the band ever almost break up?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, so I took one business class in college.
Sure.
And yeah, I studied humanities, philosophy, and French, and then
So you did nothing in college.
yeah, exactly.
You just
But-
went to college, beautiful campus,
Yeah.
probably zero study went on with that one.
All right,
Yeah.
we're in the same boat.
Loyola Marymount University, go Lions. So the one business class I took, there was a whole chapter on family businesses, and it was like 20 pages.
Like warning you?
19, and like 5/6 of those pages were about why you should not be in family businesses, and then like the last sentence was like, but family businesses can be rewarding. So I mean, my brother and I, and our dad as well, I mean, we have butt heads plenty of times, and I think that we keep each other in check a lot, and we're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different in a lot of ways, and I think we're able to reel each other in somewhat.
That's how
but we also
marriage is, right? I mean, same thing. You're a lot of similarities, but you guys.
But at the end of the day, we respect one another, and we also have to be family at the end of the day.
Sure.
And there have certainly been times where we have gotten so pissed off at one another that we just didn't want to even look at the other. But we're able to get over it pretty quick. We also know how to press each other's buttons pretty well, and we've been doing it our whole lives. So it's been a challenge, but it has been extremely rewarding. And I think we're able, it kind of comes down to who is more passionate about something. Yeah, and it's like, if you're not going to go to bat 100% for your idea, then you're probably going to lose.
There was years ago, I was someone that I used to work with. He worked in our HR department. He gave me this one tidbit of wisdom that it's always kind of stuck with me, and you just kind of touched on it a little bit. And that's the key to marriage, is that if it's more important to her, let her have it.
Yeah.
If it's more important to him, she should equally let him have it. If it's equally as important, let her have it. There's got to be a breaking point at some point, and if you can objectively look at something and say, okay, this is a really important issue for me. But I think most people can tell when you're in that debate who cares more about what's happening, right?
Yeah.
If you're more passionate or more opinion. I have friends who are left or right that I know they're way more passionate in their political opinions. I'm just going to let them have it and have another drink.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, there was a time where there was a product that I loved, and it was another barrel finish.
And you did away with it?
I loved it. I was the only one that loved it, though. And I almost don't want to say what it was, because, maybe some point in the future we'll come out with it. It's different. There's something it doesn't.
Unique?
It's unique. And I don't want to.
Well, I feel like you guys have touched on Madeira, sherry, cognac. Have you guys done a Marsala?
No, but we do have a handful of other new things in the works that we're really excited about, that you got to just kind of stay
Sure.
tuned, follow us on social media and, on our website and, email and stuff
Always tell
like
people is
that.
like follow us on social media. I know it
Yeah.
sounds cliche, but
Yeah.
we do give a lot of
Or
like,
learn how to look up colas.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
it's,
guess you could do that too.
Yeah, yeah,
but,
yeah.
but we also throw in some, colas
Curveballs,
every
yeah.
now and again
There are
that
some
we'll
people who
never
that.
do.
Some brands that will
Yeah.
throw up a cola just for the sake of a diversion or a joke, or I think what Westland does an annual April Fool's release
Yeah.
of some garbage product just as a joke.
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and is this a good time then to pour our next whiskey?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And this is our third segment. We're almost already through, so let's get into everything. What you got? I will tell you that Black Bell is genuinely fantastic.
Well, yeah, we appreciate that. Obviously, you have an incredible palate and have
Yeah,
a.
don't know about that.
But so this is our one of our latest releases. This is a local partnership with True Bee Honey. And Charlie can kind of tell you a little bit behind the True Bee Honey relationship and how that got started. But this is a 11-year-old blend, and the whole process takes close to a year.
Ooh,
We
smells fantastic.
yeah, they had contacted us and asked us if they could age their honey in our Bellmead barrels, and we said absolutely, as long as we could take those things back and put a delicious aged blend in there for
Yeah.
an additional 6 months or so. And
There was a ton of honey influence on that.
but this is all natural. So
Yeah.
we always hear people be like
I'll be honest with you. Sorry to interrupt you. I thought when I initially saw this release, I thought it was like your typical flavored releases
No.
that are all part of a lot of people's standard portfolio. Like Jack Daniel's cinnamon, or not to no negative connotation mint, but this is really, really interesting.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
a ton of honey influence, and it doesn't taste like an artificially flavored bomb, right? So there's no
And it's cask strength as well. What proof is that, Chris? Like 111, maybe?
I don't think I've seen. I'm sure this is in Texas, right?
this is
No, this is distillery only.
this
Really?
is Distillery only too. This is clocks out at 106.
Okay, I know two
As well,
bottles we
yeah.
need to pick up on the way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A Black Bell and a honey.
Yeah, so these sell out in our last release of the honey, we had, I think, 200 bottles, something like that, and we opened at 11 a.m. for the release, and the first person was in line at 2:30 a.m.
Wow.
And there were about 250 people in line for 200 bottles by like 10 a.m. So
No, yeah, it doesn't sound like it. Did he tell you about what we did with our barrel? I mean, I know we kind of touched on it a little
the
bit before.
Bellmead
yeah.
single barrel, yeah.
First time in, I don't know of anyone in Texas. I think we're the
No.
only one who got one in Texas
That
last
was
year,
you're the
right?
only one.
Yeah, last year, yeah.
Houston, Bourbon, which is so great because you guys are still sitting on all this old product, right? When's the last time you saw a 12-year?
Well-
especially nowadays for under 100
Yeah,
bucks.
and last year was the first year. So the year prior, in 2017, we released 136 single barrels, and then we all looked at each other and just
We need to
managing
slow
our
down?
inventory. And we only released 25 last year, and Houston Whiskey Social was one of 25 that we released
This was actually for
In
the
all
Bourbon
markets.
Society.
in all markets.
Out of 22 markets.
Correct.
One of 25 now. And what we did was we treat our barrels like allocations. We split them up amongst stores. Like we tell, once I know it hits the warehouse, I'll offer it to certain stores that we work with. Say, would you like a few cases? They say yay or nay. If they usually say yay. And we say, okay, you bring in 5 cases of this, you bring in, and then with specs, what we did is they're so great because they're literally everywhere.
Yeah.
We just picked the stores that would release it. It's no 2:30 in the morning lineup, but we had some people lining up at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., lining up at different stores around town, and there still wasn't enough to go around. And as soon as it opened, people are doing head counts, like trying to figure out, am I too far behind in line?
Yeah.
And I say, all in all, I think it was like 15 minutes for all 4 locations to sell out, but in some locations, it was as soon as they opened the doors.
Yeah, I remember you called me.
I was so excited, man. We wanted to do a small batch blend to kind of up the quantities. And as far as I know, you guys haven't done a small batch blend for, like if a club picked out 2 or 3 barrels and blended it. So it was It was very well received. It was actually
Yeah.
part of our Reservoir Dog series. So we did a barrel series, 6 barrels based off the characters from Reservoir Dogs.
Which character?
You guys are Mr. Blonde.
All right.
So we had a woman in our group who active member. So we said, Deanna, do you want to pick Mr. Blonde? At 12 years old, beautiful sticker on the side. The artwork for the bottle was perfect, and it was immediately gone. It was so we're fans. We're big
nice.
fans.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the support, and yeah.
Charlie made me in charge of the single barrel program, so I had to break a lot of hearts and
A lot of no's.
For those that you. I mean, I always return everyone's phone call. That's the thing I always try to do, because obviously there's a lot of templates that people send out. They said, sorry, we can't do that, but obviously it means a lot to us to bring people into our family, especially coming towards the release of our Tennessee whiskey, and we're always want to make sure that you're always know that you're loved and we appreciate it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we're incredibly fortunate to have the support that we do, and the people like y'all and the folks that might be listening and interested in what we're doing. I mean, that's the way that we've been able to grow and survive as a company. And I mean, we started with literally nothing but an idea, and it was support from starting out the Nashville community here, and just people who believed in our story and were willing to step up and support what we were doing. And thankfully, I think we were able to come out with some pretty decent whiskey. We've got a lot more to come, and we're just incredibly fortunate to have so many amazing people interested in what we're doing and supporting us and helping us grow. So
Well, that's a perfect segue, now that we're approaching the last segment, to talk about those who are helping you grow.
yeah.
So what's the big news that was recently announced about a month ago?
Yeah, so May 2nd, Constellation Brands announced...
It's a big name.
Yeah.
Big name.
So, well, let me take another step back.
Sure.
As I mentioned, the way that we got started by, first just getting a loan and then getting some investors on board, and then we needed to grow some more. And in January of 2016, I believe, Constellation Brands invested in our company as a minority equity partner and helped us grow a little bit. And so we got to know them a little bit. And I mean, obviously
It worked out. Yeah.
yeah, and we got to know them and share our vision with them over the course of the next few years. And there are so many amazing people at Constellation Brands. The leadership team there is phenomenal, and our visions are aligned. And we want to grow and take over the world. Back in the day, we were one of the largest brands. Our Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey was by far the largest Tennessee whiskey in the world, one of the largest brands of whiskey in the world and the country. And so we want to get back there. And so, we've been talking with Constellation for years about how we can further the next step. Yeah. And so on May 2nd, it was announced that they were taking the next step in that relationship, and we have come a little closer and aligned ourselves further with Constellation, and now we'll be moving forward with them in a bigger and better way. And now we'll have a lot more resources at our disposal to grow the company the way that we want. And we're still my brother and I are still running the company day to day. We're still around. We still have a nice chunk of the company, and we're just really fortunate to have partners like Constellation Brands that understand who we are, where we want to go, and to help us together
To get there.
get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys still running the company? I wasn't sure. I know that a few years back, I think I always forget who. It may have been Pernod. Who bought into a chunk of Copper and Kings to
That Constellation
that was
brands as well.
It's Constellation as
too.
well. Yeah. So
it's part of their venture.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I knew investing in, but the way I'd heard the story with you guys, it almost seemed like a much more complicated or more involved partnership than a simple investment in like Copper and Kings. Like it's a little bit more than that.
I mean, I don't know what the deals are with with their other venture partners, so I can't really speak to that. But I know. I mean, there's nothing really ordinary standard about what everything that we do really. So I mean, from in most all aspects of the business, and I mean, I have been told from the day that we started working on this business, almost every day, like, oh, well, we've never done something like that, or, well, you know, that's not something that we do. And it's like, until now.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I don't know.
What's next?
Well, I have a vision for what's next.
All right. Peek behind the curtain. So what's the vision? What can you share? What's next with Bell Mead? I mean, you guys, are we bringing back that mystery? The thing you didn't actually mention it, right? You were going to mention it.
Oh no, I mean I don't know. I don't want to say what that one is. That the extra special barrel finish.
Tabasco. You can just say Tabasco. It's fine.
You know what? I actually did. So I took a tour of the Tabasco facility. I randomly sat next to this lady at a dinner. And her family started Tabasco.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. We just happened to be sitting next to each other, and so we started talking. And I was like, "Hey, I'm actually going to be in New Orleans for Tales of the Cocktail in a few months. Like, could you help set me up with the tour?" She's like, "Well, yeah. I mean,
sure.
of course." And so I'll set you up with my brother, my cousin, or whatever. And so this was also during the barrel shortage.
Last year?
No, this was like
4 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Whenever the barrel shortage was, and so I get to tour, like a one-on-one private tour of the Tabasco campus and facility. It was amazing. I love Tabasco and hot
smell
sauce.
like? When we walked in here, it smelled like a barrel. That's that classic love for all whiskey nerds when you walk into a place where barrels are being stored and aged. I can't imagine the smell of a Tabasco plant.
Oh my God,
Charlie loves hot sauce.
I do. I do.
Well,
You
ever watch Hot Ones?
No.
Oh, if you love hot sauce, there's a YouTube channel called Hot Ones, and this guy Sean Evans interviews people over 10 wings, but each wing gets progressively hotter.
Oh man!
And it gets major celebrities. Scarlett Johansson did it without blinking. You get a couple. They've had a couple rappers come in there, and they tapped out after 3 wings. They couldn't do the whole interview, but. It's 10 questions. Oh, Gordon Ramsay just did it. Yeah, that one episode was like 30 million.
I bet he's cussing.
Oh yeah,
man. I used to be able to handle super duper hot stuff a lot better than I can now.
That one episode's like 30 million views, and it's just a quick like 15 to 20. A lot of comedians. Bill Burr, you talked about, which I wanted to ask you. I know it was off camera, and so no one listening knows that you said this, but you actually, I didn't get to participate in that conversation. I'm a huge Bill Burr fan.
I'm glad, man. I listen to Bill Burr every Monday and every Thursday.
Bill Burr, Rogan.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, and Bill Burr did it. Bill Burr did the Hot Ones where you get each wing gets hotter and hotter until your mouth is on fire, cussing, and he asks a question about. It's an interview, right? So you've got to like push through the pain to think of the answer, you know. But anyway, so Tabasco, it smells fantastic.
Yeah. So I mean, long
Sounds
story short,
disgusting.
we're walking through the aging facility, and all Tabasco, I'm not sure if everybody knows this, is aged in old whiskey barrels, and it's aged for at least 3 years. And so we're walking through the facility, and guys were cleaning up a little bit, spraying the ground, and so they're washing the floors, and they're just peppers all in the air. So if you've ever been in a kitchen where you're like someone's like frying jalapeno or peppers, like nobody in there could breathe without coughing. Just,
Right.
like. And
It's just capsaicin in the air.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And I actually have a video of it on my phone somewhere. But anyway, it was John who opens up 2 barrels. He's like, hey, this is a barrel that's got some hot pepper mash that's been aged for 3 months. And this is some that's been aged for 3 years. I was like, oh, cool. Can I taste that? And he's like, well, okay, sure. So I tasted, but of course it was hot as hell, like hotter than just regular Tabasco, which is
Younger's
diluted.
hotter?
Well, they were both. I can't even remember which one was hotter, but they were both super hot, like more concentrated than Tabasco, because the actual Tabasco I think gets like diluted with vinegar and probably water. So I can't remember everything, but. Anyway, it's hot as hell. I'm sweating and, everything. And then a few minutes later, they were like, oh, shit, we forgot. Normally we like mess with people and, this is a whole thing where we, go through this process. And if you are like willing to taste this, then you get inducted into the not so secret society of the not so silver spoon. And I'm like, what the hell? What is that? And so they tell me this whole story that dates back to like the 1800s. Yeah. But I had already done it. I had already eaten the mash. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll get this spoon on a necklace. Sure. And I'm wearing the
Are you wearing it now?
spoon. No, I'm not wearing it. It's hanging up in my office. But I go straight from the Tabasco facility on Avery Island to New Orleans to Tales of the Cocktail, and I'm still wearing this spoon. And I go to this party, and all these bartenders are coming up to me like, dude, hey.
They know?
You got it. You got it. And I was like, yeah, I ate the pepper mash. Yeah. And they're like, no. What are you talking about? Come on, you got to share, man. I'm like, wait, what do you?
I thought it was a drug spoon.
Yeah, it took me like 13 people coming up to me.
I'm from Pasadena. I knew immediately what you were saying.
I had no idea. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm taking this little spoon off of my neck. And I'm not.
I'm part of a club where we grow our pinky nail out.
Not so silver spoon.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I had no idea. So anyway, that was my experience. And while I was at Tabasco, though, I was like, hey, would you guys want to do like a barrel swap some point? Like we do some cask finishing. Well, this was a few years before they did it. And I have tried Dickel, and I think that they did a really good job with the.
Are you being diplomatic right now?
I think that they
tried it. I'm a huge fan. Like I try to be as impartial as possible. I actually love a lot of what Diageo does, especially their scotches. I'm a huge fan of Dickel. In fact, we bought several barrels of Dickel bourbon, 14-year-old bourbon this year for the group. I'm a fan. Your Tabasco product is not good. But I mean that with respect and love. You can love, Sean's my brother-in-law. I love him dearly. I hate the fact that he has hair and I'm struggling to keep mine. We can be honest with each other, you know what I mean?
I'm okay with him.
We can be friends and be honest, you know. It's
but you got to think about it as far as like branding goes. Like when people have seen that, they're like, Tabasco.
They did a great job branding it.
It just goes. Everyone always.
They did a great job branding it and making the label look like the Tabasco bottle while still keeping the font of the Dickel
really
logo.
cool.
Like it was very, very well done.
Absolutely.
The first time I tried it, I think it was in a cocktail, and it actually wasn't bad. I had it straight, and I was not so much a fan.
They do have the shots. I've heard, at least I haven't had one, called the Hot Dick Pick, which is the.
It sounds like a good horse name.
The Tabasco finished Dickel and a pickleback.
Oh, I'll take it. I like a good pickleback.
Yeah. But anyway,
but not the band Nickelback. But go ahead.
So we're not going to be doing any hot sauce finishes, though I do love hot sauce. And we've got a lot of fun stuff that we're sort of experimenting with. But our signature brand and our focus is on our Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey, which we're planning on launching later this year.
Okay, so let's do this. We've got about 5 minutes left before we have to go. Let's do one more drink of something and tell me what we can expect with a Nelson Greenbrier. Well, when's it hitting? How many states? Is there any focus markets? Is it only going to be in Houston? Can we say fuck you, Dallas? what's the because Four Roses just released their small batch select, and we could absolutely come back to that Black Bell. Their small batch select, and they only put it in Houston and
pass
Austin.
the ball around. How about that
Sure.
one? Yeah.
They only
I
did
might
Houston
go
and
back
Austin, but not Dallas. When
Go
can
back
we
with
see
the
Nelson Greenbrier
Reserve,
launched?
actually.
Right now, we're focused on obviously Tennessee, and we're looking to really focus on Nashville, and upcoming this, probably closer to the Q4 time.
Sure.
But we got a lot of work to do.
And your Q4 is calendar.
Yes,
Yeah.
Q4 and calendar,
Yeah.
right? So we're all very excited, but as I just said, we have a lot of work to do perfecting it, because Charlie and I agree on this. You and been in the business is the only industry I've ever been in as far as on the sales side, that you get one chance to launch a brand, and this brand being our flagship brand, we're not going to mess this up.
I don't think you're gonna. I've tasted it. It's been about a year since I've had it. I don't think you're gonna mess it up. You think you guys have a great reputation. I don't think you're really at risk. There's no red flags, at least from what I'm seeing, from where I'm sitting. I'm excited. I think it's great, and of course, everyone loves a brand who's been built off sourcing to actually say, "Look, now we're doing this. We want to do this." I mean, you didn't look. The distilleries all over, especially in Texas, they build their back off of either sourcing or making a gin or a vodka, right? You guys have been doing everything you can to innovate the exact same way you did
That's right.
200 years ago, right? Right? When was the Civil War?
1860.
Yeah.
1864.
So I don't think there's any big glaring. I think you guys are good. I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see it. Have you guys already done TTB and then more importantly TABC? Because TABC is lacking in
so
productivity.
So Chris may have touched on this a little bit, but our plan. So we're planning on launching it later this year, in the closer to the fourth quarter, and we only have a limited amount of inventory starting out.
Just Tennessee.
Because so it's going to start initially just in Nashville.
Rude. Flew all this way.
Well,
Can't even-
This gives everybody a reason to come back to Nashville and hang out with us.
That's why you got to come and spend some time at
the
the
hot
distillery.
Well, that's
and,
why we always want people to come here because
Sure.
we love hosting folks.
and also we're working on launching the Cooper's Club, which will be our sort of fan club sort
Sure.
of deal, where you can get access to new and
like Mellow
innovative-
Moments or Makers, they do theirs thing, and absolutely.
Yeah, and but so when we first started production, initially we were running. We weren't even distilling necessarily every day. We were getting our sort of just getting everything up and running. So we started off a little slow, and then we really ramped it up to going from just a few days a week to then 7 days a week to 2 shifts, then 2 shifts 7 days a week, and we gradually progress. And while we started out a little bit slow, and the inventory level will reflect that, we did grow. And so after a year or so, we will have a lot more inventory coming online, where we'll be able to grow into bigger markets and
Texas.
Sure.
Texas, and Texas has treated us very well, and so we definitely want to pay
Absolutely.
it back.
Yep.
So there's a couple of quick questions I have. We've got about 2 minutes left, so you can keep your answers short, because I know that the couple of these questions you may want to keep them short. How many barrels aging do you guys have total currently?
Not enough.
Not enough. That's a good short answer. My follow-up question to that was, how much of the Nelson Greenbrier, how much of your own distillate have you guys laid down?
Man, Again, not enough, but we're increasing production pretty much every day, and our yield has been getting bigger and better. So we're growing that, and we also have plans to eventually, build another bigger distillery so that we can produce a lot more of not only our Greenbrier Tennessee whiskey, but also eventually our Bellmead bourbon, bring all that in-house. That's the plan, at least.
With the switch to Constellation, are you guys going to be assessing each state on whether or not to change distributors if it doesn't align with currently who has Constellation brands for that?
Yeah, I mean, we're, for the most part, like we had been kind of trying to align ourselves with Constellation's distributors, and I mean...
So does that mean you're going to be switching from Specs the way that KBD did? Specs is with, I'm sorry, not Specs, but United.
United. So, don't know yet exactly. Specs and United have been great to us, and we really cherish and honor that relationship. And that's something that that's one of only a couple relationships that are, well, all of our relationships are extremely important to us.
It's an exceptional one that requires lots of thought.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And so, don't know exactly yet what the deal is. So,
my last question, if I can remember, because I blanked for a second. It was more commentary. Commentary followed by a last question, and then we can go. You guys got in early with this MGP thing.
Yeah.
And bought up quite a bit of those double-digit barrels. And you guys have been blowing it out of the water every year with like just phenomenal 12, for less, as these new sourcing brands pop up and everyone's throwing $150 for this or whatever for a 10 or a 12-year-old whiskey. You guys are still like chugging along. Is there much left? I mean, you guys, as successful as your brand is, you guys worried about running out of those? Or?
Well, so we started working on this whole business 13 years ago.
Sure.
In 2006. And, as I mentioned previously, we had a broker that would actually come to our house and try and sell us.
Sit at the old Nelson dinner table.
Yeah, that does not happen anymore. And
so you guys got the relationships early on.
We have a relationship, and like, the CEO of MGP sent me an email a few years ago. There was a picture of this old ledger that he said, looks like we've been doing business together for longer than you and I both knew. And it was, I can show it to you in a little bit, but it was from 1876, I believe, and it was, or 1878 maybe.
Wow.
And it was record of Charles Nelson buying 151 barrels for $1.35 a piece. And my response was, "Hey, can we get
that grandfather discount?
Right?
That great grandfather discount?"
And it was great. It wasn't like that actual distillery, but it's a distillery that was under the MGP umbrella.
That's still pretty incredible.
And so we're fortunate to have a really good relationship with them, and I think that that's the main thing that this business is about. So we're good. And we started off buying barrels that were like 3 to 5 years old, and we also were laying down some new make. And we've also done some other contract production as well. Like we've done some contract production with Bardstown Bourbon Company as well. So we've got some fun and exciting things, and we're trying to make sure that we maintain a consistent taste profile from batch to batch.
Very important.
Yeah.
Talking about ruining a brand by not doing it right, launching it right the first time. You can launch it right the first time, but if that second batch is garbage, I think you've done just as much damage as failing to launch the first time.
Yeah.
Not that I'm expecting that from y'all, but just in general, you guys have done a great job of I've been begging him for more stuff, so you guys are slow and steady.
Man, I do my best to make everyone happy as best as I can. So we'll talk.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Listen, thanks so much for doing this. Thanks so much for sitting down. We ran a little long today, but I'll leave that up to my producer to trim out the fat.
Yeah.
But this was great, and this was great. So thanks so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Ding.